If you're out here in 2022 making everyday transactions and you're not getting any Bitcoin as cashback, I don't know what you're doing, my friend. And that is why in today's video, we're going to be going through 5 of the best Bitcoin cashback cards for 2022. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. And I'm excited to do today's video, which is in direct response to some of your requests. And that is to see a kind of lay of the land in terms of Bitcoin cashback cards. Now, there's a whole slew of, crypto-related cards that have come out onto the market. Today, I'm really focusing on Bitcoin cashback. Like, what are the different debit or credit options that you have to stack Bitcoin as you do something that you're anyways already doing, which is making everyday transactions. As I covered in a recent video where I went through the 5 ways I'm stacking sats in 2022, one of those methods is exactly this. And I think if you're not doing it, you are leaving Bitcoin on the table. And ain't nobody got time for that. So today's video, I'm going to start with just a brief kind of overview of all the different pieces you want to be thinking about when considering these different options. And then we'll go through the options themselves. So you're not going to want to miss a thing. For those returning to the channel, welcome back, my friends. As always, it is great to have you, particularly during these turbulent times. Many on social media seem to be quite depressed. There's a great sort of picture that I'll flash up if I can find it again that shows this sort of sentiment analysis now that we're at 40K. And so people are just like absolutely gobsmacked and depressed. But as hodlers, we know this is an absolute blessing. Who would have guessed that we would have the chance to stack at these levels? And for those new to the channel, I welcome you as well. I know there are many of you, in fact, over 80% of you watching right this very moment are not currently subscribed. So if you like this content, I invite you to consider subscribing and join us in our growing merry gang in cyberspace. I cover all manner of Bitcoin related content, including wallet tutorials, how-tos, Lightning Network, DeFi on Bitcoin, running your own node, mining, news analysis. You want it, I cover it. With all that out of the way though, let's jump in and start with just a brief sort of overview, and then we'll get into some of the choices. So again, as alluded to, I think the overall motivation here is pretty clear. Why would you not want to earn Bitcoin back for something you're anyways already doing, which is making everyday transactions? Putting gas in your car, buying groceries, whatever the case may be, you have an opportunity. Now, the most common thing some people will say is, well, I already have like an awesome cashback card. I'm making, some great cashback rate on my ultra super platinum, blah, blah card. And I'm just going to, I just use that for Bitcoin. Guess what? It is my experience that overwhelmingly it's the case that folks who say that aren't actually doing it as consistently as they would like, right? And so there's a benefit here of getting cash back, not in fiat, that you then have to go turn around and convert into Bitcoin. And you have to, remember to do that. But rather to just have it directly back as Bitcoin, boom, no fuss, nothing more to remember. I promise you that is going to be more effective at ensuring that you're consistently stacking as opposed to doing all the conversion from a fiat cashback. So that's like the main motivation as to why you would want to do this. Now, of course, there are 2 main types of card products, and we're going to cover options on both today. One category is sort of debit, prepaid. We'll kind of make those interchangeable for now. So basically, you're filling it up with fiat that you can then spend and get Bitcoin back as cashback. That's kind of the prepaid / debit category. And then of course you have credit cards. So these are typically instances where you have your credit worthiness assessed by the financial institution, and then you're granted a card that has a certain credit limit that you can spend up to. And of course, you have to pay that down every month, pay interest if applicable, depending on your behavior. But with those sort of 2 buckets, as an overarching framework, I would kind of advocate for 3 main areas to think about. One is, of course, like the P&L, the economics. What are the value of the rewards in relation to any fees that are attached to the card. And so things to consider there include, is it a flat cashback rate? Like, is it just a straight up 1.5% on everything? Is there a cap on that? Or are there variable reward rates depending on, sometimes you have bonus categories. So maybe you get a higher rate on groceries, and then you get a kind of lower base rate on everything else. So that's definitely something to consider. In terms of fees, the big one is, of course, an annual fee that folks will think of. But, think deeper than that, right? There's foreign transaction fees. There's, there can be ATM withdrawal fees. Sometimes you get like a free, withdrawal from an ATM every month. Again, who's, taking dirty physical fiat out of an ATM? But you never know, right? Like, so there's other fees that you need to think about beyond just the annual fee. And then, of course, if it's a credit card, you need to think about the interest rate. If you are a revolver, meaning if you buy things and you don't pay it off right away, if you have part of that balance of things you just bought that rotates into, the next month, that will actually start generating interest that you have to pay back. Of course, that interest rate is important to keep in mind. So that's the economics. The second category I would think about is the ethos and reputation of the company. There are a lot of emerging products in this space, some of which have more merit than others. And I think it's important, even for like the big names in this industry, it's important to really keep a keen eye and have a high level of scrutiny when, deciding to interact in any way when it comes to your Bitcoin with any of these entities. And so we'll keep that in mind as we go through some of the options. And then the third and final piece of the kind of framework I would encourage you to think about is the user experience. So, what is the acceptance of these cards? Ideally, they would be on a network such as Visa or MasterCard. So you have broad, massive acceptance, across the world and across different merchants. A critical piece that folks do not often think about is the reward instantaneous or not? And so for the vast majority of credit card options, they're not. What does that mean? Let's say that you spend a bunch in January 2022. What will often happen is it's not like when you go and spend and swipe your card that you're getting the commensurate amount of sats as cashback instantaneously in a lot of these options. We'll talk about those options that do that. And so this can be tricky, right? Like, what if the price of Bitcoin is really lower, we'll say, now than it is a month from now, when you're actually going to be receiving your rewards for the expenses that you made and paid back in the month prior, right? That can make a big difference. And so, when you think about like timing big purchases, maybe you have a large purchase that you want to time when the fiat exchange rate of Bitcoin is low. So you want to maximize the sats you get back for what you're spending. If the rewards are not instantaneous, then that becomes a lot harder to do. The other piece, of course, is just basic hygiene, ensuring that you're able to withdraw your Bitcoin rewards and it's not just sort of stuck in a exchange or system that you can't withdraw out of. I don't think any of the options I go through today have that sort of restriction, but something to think about as well. And then lastly, there can be additional utility. Like, for example, the main use case I'm thinking of in this video is, again, spending your useless fiat on things you're anyways already spending it on and getting Bitcoin as a cashback. But there's going to be some of you who may want to actually spend your Bitcoin. And if that's you, then there's going to be some cards that allow you to do that, to basically load up your card and interchangeably spend crypto or fiat. So that's an overall kind of lay of the land: debit/prepaid products, credit products, and then these three kind of pieces you should be thinking about across those. With that framing, let's go ahead and jump into the specific options that I think are some of your best bets for 2022. All right, so in our 5 card products, we're going to go through first 2 that are in the kind of debit/prepaid category, and then we're going to go through 3 that are in the credit card category. And I do have an honorable mention at the end that we'll get to. So let's start with debit/prepaid. The first one I want to cover is none other than the Fold app. The Fold has made its name in the community by, number one, being one of the first sort of Bitcoin cashback debit cards. But also really probably out of all the names on this list has the strongest kind of ethos, reputation within the Bitcoin community. That doesn't necessarily mean that The second you focus on other assets other than Bitcoin, you suddenly lose kind of reputation and ethos. But I do think it's important, right? Like, if you have one thing that you're focused on, then you're probably going to do it really, really well, versus if you have all these kind of assets that you're juggling, maybe you're less focused, right? And so Fold really does have, I think, the best reputation in the game when it comes to Bitcoin Cashback. They've sort of made that their entire mission and company. Now, in terms of the economics, the P&L, Fold is a little more variable than I think some users would like. Like, some people are just going to be like, give me like 1%, 2%, whatever it is, give me that and give me that consistently. Fold has actually gamified its process. It's sort of evolved over kind of year plus since it launched. But you basically have this very interesting kind of gamified element where every swipe you make, like, you could go right now to the grocery store, buy groceries, and the second that transaction rings up, you get a notification in your Fold app, and you can spin a wheel that then dictates the amount of cash back you receive. And they've tweaked the sort of, rewards a little bit to see what their users like, what their users don't like. And I think they're gradually settling on this kind of base, almost like base 1% cashback. And then you have a chance to get something on top of that, depending on the little wedge on the wheel that you land on. I quite like this mechanic, but I definitely know folks who just say, "Look, I don't want to deal with that. Like, I just want the cash back. Like, just give me the cash back." And so there's potentially other options if that is you that you'd want to go with. But if you are so curious about Fold, you have these two basic options. You have the Spin card and the Spin Plus. The big difference here is the annual fee and the rewards. And so for the basic Spin, you can get no annual fee, but you get lower rewards basically, and that's the trade-off. For Spin Plus, it's a $150 annual fee, but the rewards are better. Now, this is really the only one on this list I can speak to with personal experience, and I can definitely tell you over the last year of using Fold, the Spin Plus has a much more than paid for itself. So I think if you're going to do Fold, Spin Plus is probably a no-brainer. I can't really think of an instance that you would want to do the regular Spin. The economics just favor Spin Plus significantly. And there's some other pieces and differences to be aware of that I'll flash up here. If you want to pause and kind of look, I'll put all these websites, of course, in the description down below that you can take a look at. But I want to basically give you the kind of big picture here. The final thing I'll mention about Fold is that it really started from the very outset as even like a gift card. They would basically partner with different merchants, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Uber Eats, whatever the case is. So they'll partner with these merchants, and you can buy gift cards of these merchants with your Fold card. And you may think, well, that seems kind of clunky and silly, but it is what it is, right? Every merchant has these different partnerships with a variety of entities where they'll basically say, hey, look, Fold, if you can sell my gift cards, to your users, then I'm willing to attach an offer to that. And so that offer becomes this kind of extra cashback that Fold's able to give back. And so this is really where you can start to optimize this. I honestly think if Fold, for as great a company as it is, I love the team, you can probably get a better overall cashback rate elsewhere. But if you're being strategic and you're going in and you're looking at the different sort of offers, I will throw up a little screen share here so you can see what I mean. But you can see some of these offers are significant. You have a 5% back on Amazon gift cards when you purchase with your Fold card. Everyone uses Amazon. You could use Amazon for basically everything. So that suddenly becomes not a 1% sort of base fee, but that becomes a 5%. And guess what? You also spin the wheel on that transaction. So you could get 5% plus whatever you get on the wheel. There's some others here that have some pretty crazy offers. And that's how you really get the most out of your Fold card. You strategically buy these gift cards for merchants that you use every day. And if you're a big user of any of these merchants, particularly Amazon, I think it can make a great deal of sense for you. Final piece around Fold that I'll mention is that the rewards are instant, meaning you go, you plan a big purchase for when the fiat exchange rate of Bitcoin is lower, right? You can get those sats back to your balance instantly. So that is really, really nice. And it allows you to be strategic and time those big purchases. So that's the Fold card. I've really enjoyed it. I think they're going to continue to tinker with some of the gamification elements. But overall, a really, really great option, particularly if you spend a lot with some of these merchants that offer really great offers like Amazon. Let's move on to the next option. And this is the second and final within the kind of debit and prepaid category. And it is the Crypto.com Visa prepaid cards. Now, I almost hesitated to put this one even on here because I think it has some bells and whistles that like make this a more complex thing. But I still think it's interesting enough to warrant going through. So as you can see here on this kind of different card tiers that they have, they've got quite a few different options. And the big thing to look at is this row where it says CRO rewards. So this is the cashback amount. And as you can see, it goes all the way from 1% to 8%. And how that varies is depending on the amount of CRO, which is the Crypto.com token, that you are staking. So for example, if you're just like, no, I ain't got time for that, and you do nothing, you can still get a 1% cashback with the Midnight Blue option. But the second that you start to stake some CRO, you can start to get these elevated rates all the way up to a chunky 8%. Of course, that requires a very large amount of money that you're staking in CRO. But again, like you start to look at the 4,000 and it's like, it starts to get interesting, I think, for a lot of people. So I'm not a huge fan of this, needing to buy this separate token, stake it just to get a juiced up, cashback reward back. But like it is a thing. And for those people that really, really want to max out their cashback earnings, maybe you have a business that you're kind of putting all that spend through the card. And so there's going to be a ton of spend on the card. Like that can make a big difference. So, I personally probably wouldn't do this, but it is an interesting option. And as we kind of scroll down, you can see some different benefits that these cards also have. So, the Spotify and Netflix, for example, you can basically get reimbursed for like a month of Spotify or Netflix. That's what these mean. So, some additional benefits that I think are nice and that I think are pretty unique within the kind of debit/prepaid realm here. You even get some like airport lounge access stuff. So overall, like pretty interesting. Critically, you also get your rewards in CRO. So you'd have to kind of go in and, convert your CRO into Bitcoin. So I think that's a huge like bummer. I think that goes back to the original reason why you'd want to do these cards in the first place. Like, the people who are saying, well, I can get an even better fiat cashback and then I'll just convert that into Bitcoin. This kind of starts to feel like that. And so for a lot of folks, I think that will maybe turn them away. But again, like under the right conditions with the right amount of spend, I think this is at least an interesting option. But again, I personally think there's probably too many drawbacks in terms of, needing to stake to get any kind of meaningful reward back. As well as getting the reward not in Bitcoin, but in CRO. So that's my 2 cents. Let's move to the third option, and this is the first option within the credit card category. And the first thing I want to look at is the Upgrade Bitcoin Rewards credit card. NYDIG is providing a lot of the Bitcoin services that's powering this card, so that's great. NYDIG has a very, very good reputation within the industry. But the basics for the upgrade card are you get 1.5% cashback in Bitcoin. That's unlimited, which is really nice. And so for someone who wants just like a no frills, just give me a single number that I'm just going to get back, unlimited, the 1.5% here is really nice. That being said, there are no bonus categories. It's a flat rate. And the thing to keep in mind here as well is that these rewards are also not instant. If you look at their fine print, it says, within 1 to 2 statement periods from the date that the payment is received. So let's say you're making payments in January 2022 with this card, you would then have to pay those expenses back, and then 1 statement period later, only then would you receive the Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin you receive is done at the exchange rate of when you're receiving it, not when the purchases were made. So this sort of delinks your ability to time big purchases in your favor. And so that is definitely a con with this option. But you also get a $200 welcome bonus after making $500 in purchases and 3 consecutive on-time payments. So that's a pretty decent little welcome bonus. And what's nice, and this is pretty common across these options, but no annual fee and no foreign transaction fees. So very, very nice there. The last thing I'll note is that this is a good option if your credit score is a little bit lower. I think their credit requirement for the most part is sort of fair. So that could be anywhere between 300 and 669, I think. So, if your credit score is not quite where you want it to be, this could be a solid option. And again, it gets you that nice 1.5% back, but it is not instant. And so that is something to think about. All right, the next and fourth option in our list is the BlockFi Visa Signature Credit Card. Now, this is a similar proposition to the upgrade product we just covered in that you have a 1.5% sort of cashback, but it does have a pretty nice offer when you first join, which is that you get 3.5% back for your first 90 days. But that bonus rate is capped at $100 of fiat back in Bitcoin. So like for those who want to just cherry pick this offer and max out, the 3.5% for 3 months, unfortunately you cannot do that. There is a cap that they put on it. You can bump that. So after the initial 90 days or after you've exhausted that 3.5 kind of bonus period, you can bump yourself from 1.5% to a 2% flat rate back within a given year after you spend $50,000 on the card. So again, it's a fairly high threshold, but if you're pumping a lot of spend through this card, maybe you're using it for a business or something, that can be interesting, that extra 50 basis points or 0.5% of reward back. Keep in mind, this is also not instant, so it's going to function similarly to what I just described for upgrade. BlockFi does attach some nice referral benefits. So if you refer someone to this card product, you get $30 in Bitcoin per referral, which is nice. And then in terms of that sort of third bucket we talked about in our framework of like user experience, of course, this is connected to your BlockFi account. And so you have kind of a nice way to both have a way to earn, Bitcoin as cashback. And then also, you can pop back over to BlockFi, borrow against your Bitcoin and, have more fiat for whatever spending. So like all in all, decent option. I would caution around the sort of ethos and reputation of BlockFi. They've definitely been called out for some tactics in the past of, being probably a little too marketing driven, having, claims that maybe are not kind of followed through on. So just be wary of that. They definitely have some practices that some in the community have kind of called out, and rightly so. So again, I would not score BlockFi particularly high on the kind of reputation and ethos piece, but I do think those initial bonus, that initial bonus rate that you get, plus the ability to potentially jump up to a 2% if you spend above a certain threshold, can be compelling under the right circumstances. The next and final option on our list, and the last one within the credit card category as well, is the Nexo MasterCard credit card. Now, I think this is a really nice option, an alternative to BlockFi, in that you get a 2% flat rate across the board. So no need to spend $50,000 just to get to that kind of 2% tier. And it also has merit versus the Crypto.com option in that while Nexo does have its own token, you can choose whether to receive your rewards back in that token or in native Bitcoin. So that's very nice. That being said, keep in mind that this particular product, it's essentially like borrowing against your, your crypto. You essentially have your balance in your Nexo account, and they're going to extend your credit line accordingly, right? And so, you essentially have a credit line based on the assets you have in Nexo. And so this is a little bit different. I would say it's very good for someone who maybe has a horrible credit score or is new to the market and doesn't even have an established credit footprint. Nexo is basically allowing you a card that can extend you a small credit line for everyday spending based on the assets that you have and not necessarily your credit worthiness, right? Which we know is sort of centrally controlled. You only have a couple credit bureaus that can assign you a score, based on all these different credit related behaviors. So that makes it a very interesting choice versus the other credit card options we've discussed today, which are going to do the traditional kind of credit scoring of you and either issue or not issue the card depending on that credit score. So a little bit different for Nexo. Keep that in mind. I want to do one last honorable mention, and that is the Gemini MasterCard credit card. The reason I'm giving this an honorable mention, number one, it's currently waitlist only. I'm not actually sure how long that waitlist is, but the product is live. It is operational. But what's nice about the Gemini credit card option is that the rewards are instant. So it's connected to your Gemini account. And the rewards are instant, which is really nice, and that is a differentiator for sure within this credit card category. You have tiered rewards, so you have 3% back on dining. It's a little bit unclear, like what does dining actually entail. You have 2% back on groceries and then 1% back on anything else. So particularly if you're a big spender in some of those bonus categories, this could be quite a good option in the credit realm. I honestly think if forced to pick, in the debit/prepaid option, my pick goes to Fold for sure. And in the kind of credit card option, I think I would probably give the nod to either Gemini or Nexo. But I'm curious to hear what you think. What are your thoughts on the list? What would you add? Is there something you're using that you really love? Let me know in the comments down below. But for now, we'll leave the list there and let's go ahead and conclude today's video. All right, my friends, there you have it. We covered a lot of ground as we always do. Just as a recap, we went through the kind of motivation and an overall framework for thinking about these different card products. Of course, you have debit and prepaid, and then you have credit as sort of the two main categories. And then in terms of like what to think about, of course, you need to think through the economics. What are the rewards I could get in relation to any of the fees, and dig deep and look through some of the fine print in terms of the fees. Secondly, like what's the ethos and reputation of the company? And then third, what is that user experience? Do you get extra utility depending on who the entity is that's sort of providing the card? Are the rewards instantaneous or not? All these pieces are relevant as well. And we made some conclusions around what are my favorite picks, which would definitely include the Fold card, as well as probably the Gemini and Nexo credit card options. But let me know what you think. I hope you found this valuable and useful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave this here. As a reminder, my friends, every sat counts, especially if you're earning them for something you're anyways already doing. And until next time, I'll see you then.